91.3 WBNY, courtesy Breitbart.
It infuriated me because this is a great...
All right, welcome to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here. Welcome you to our broadcast, focused on providing you insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following the Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And, of course, our program is live, so you can call and you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. We've got important stuff to be talking about today. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. We're here in studio with our citizen, the first citizen of Buffalo, New York, Norm MacArthur. Welcome, Norm.
Thank you, Mr. Hare, and good morning, sir.
Norm's our in-studio audience of one. And, of course, we're here with our IT genius, the one who makes it possible for us to have this live streaming of the program, Willie H. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. Calling live, y'all, 716-878-5104.
You know, we live in a world where there are so many things going on, but the world is so big, we can almost, this is going to sound horrible, but we can almost ignore what's going on in all the other parts of the world where things are falling into pieces. We have a massive escalation of the conflict between the Palestinians and their supporters in the Middle East and the Israelis, the nation of Israel. And this is a powder keg. I don't know if you all are conscious of this, but Israel is a nuclear power. It may be small, but it's a nuclear power.
Yeah, definitely.
Their bombs aren't small. We're in a situation where you have interest groups that are likely to collide with each other over which way they want to see the direction of Israel go, or the direction of how Israel defends itself to go. And I think it's important, and there's a lot of other stuff that I want to talk about today. We still need to talk about what's going on with the House, Speaker of the House, issue, and the direction that we see the country is going in that mode. But Norm, as a citizen, what's your thought, in terms of how you perceive the this massive escalation? Apparently, hundreds, if not more than maybe over 1,000 people who are aligned with Hamas and the Palestinian organization or whoever, those that are what they say they're fighting for their freedom. I shouldn't say it that way. That doesn't sound right. They are fighting for their freedom. People who are living on lands that are being occupied by somebody else, and they're living under the laws of somebody else, and they're being treated as if they're the threat to their environment, so they're almost in an outdoor jail. Those people are fighting for their freedom. The people who are occupying those people, who are occupying those lands, who are keeping those people in that outdoor prison context, we don't have good words, for that.
Right.
We need to talk about that, right? But before getting all the way down a tangent, I just wanted to get your overall, had you been following this?
Let me just say, I haven't really been following it except what I heard this morning with Amy. But number one, I'd just like to ask, is Israel, are we allied or are we aligned with them in any way?
We are almost as close an ally with Israel as we are with Canada.
I felt like that. So, I know we used to have, or there was a war that went on years ago with the PLO and Palestine Liberation Organization.
Okay, let me do this. Let me bring us up to speed.
Bring me up because
everybody's not down on the history and whatnot,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
The Jewish population, particularly in Europe, but not just in Europe, I'm going to explain this in just a second, has been treated as if it was a suspect population for centuries. This has gone on since the fall of Rome. In fact, maybe even earlier than that. The Jewish population, when Christianity became the context of the Roman civilization, when the Constantine, accepted Christianity as the state religion of the Roman Empire, Constantine then imposed Christianity on everybody in the Roman Empire. So you may have been worshiping Baal or Modek or whatever, the various deities are, Ea and so on. But once the Caesar adopted Christianity and made that the state religion, he then imposed that across the kingdom. It didn't mean that everybody went that way, but that's what was being imposed. That's what was considered to be the norm. Anybody who wasn't in that norm was abnormal, was doing something outside of the, what they considered to be the course, the respected course of people in that world. So the Jewish population, which was not Christian, I mean, the Jews themselves, there were the Christian population were Jews who converted to Christianity. Let me say it this way: they converted to the following of Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Christianity is the name of the religious forms that evolved after that occurred. So you have the followers of the Christ. You have the Roman Empire, which has adopted around 313, 320 or so AD, adopted Christianity as the state religion, and they are now imposing that on everybody. You got the Jewish people that lived in that community had been conquered. You had Judah and the former nation of Israel, which this is another part of the story, but I'll get to that in a second. But the former nation of Israel, it had become a province of the Roman Empire. They had been conquered, so they became a province of the Roman Empire. And that population of people, they are now not just living in Judea, they're living in, Greece and Spain and Rome. And, that's what happens. You become a citizen of another nation, you do what other people in the other nation do. So you got Jewish people migrating all over the place, right? But they were treated as if they were a suspect population from this perspective. The Jewish population that lived in Judea was a population that was focused on the economic structure of the Middle East. They being in what we call a nexus. In other words, in order for you to trade, to get goods or buy goods from Africa, and you lived in Southwest Asia, you had to go through the Palestinian corridor. Remember, they didn't have airplanes at that time. They didn't have railroads. So you had to go by camel or horse or whatever way, you came. But you did that going through this corridor, which is where the Jewish people, that was their homeland. That's where they lived. Now, it's their homeland. Keep in mind that there are other people who the Palestinian territory was other people's homeland. If you were an Amorite, if you were a Hittite, if you were Mitanni, or however you say that name, and so on, those people that lived in Assyria and so on, they lived in the Palestinian corridor too. In fact, they were living in the Palestinian corridor before the Jewish people arrived in the Palestinian corridor. When Abraham left Haran, near the Euphrates River, and took instruction from the one God to move, he migrated to Egypt, right? How did he get to Egypt? He had to go through Palestine, right? So they weren't the indigenous people of Palestine. They became residential people of Palestine, but they were not the indigenous people of Palestine. Those Amorites and Assyrians and Hittites and whatever those various Semitic people are over there, they were the indigenous population.
Okay.
Now, they weren't mad, not any madder than they would be about anybody else moving into their territory. but it wasn't like necessarily a racial thing. But it became a common theme because the Jews were blamed for killing the Christ. So when Constantine adopted Christianity as the state religion of the Roman Empire, the learning that people got out of that was, well, all of these things happened, the miracles, the Gospels, et cetera, and in the course of that, the Christ was killed. The Christ, who is the foundation, the author, the finisher of our faith, was killed, was crucified. Who crucified the Christ? Now, Norm, I know you read well. And when you read, you actually remember what you read. So when you remember what you read, you remember it was Pontius Pilate.
Yes, sir.
Who killed the Christ.
Yeah. Wasn't really the Jew.
He's the one that washed his hands,
right?
And said, I'm not in it. I'm letting it go down, but I'm not in it. Mm-hmm. He wasn't Jewish.
Right.
He was a Roman, an Italian Roman.
Well, hold up, Mister.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pontius Pilate. I saw the movie.
Mm-hmm.
He read the Bible. He asked the Jews, "Who do you want?"
Barabbas or
Right.
So
I don't know if Pontius Pilate is responsible. I think the Jews are responsible.
Let me just be clear.
Okay.
Who pulled the trigger?
Well, he had the power to pull.
Whose gallows was the Christ hung from?
Pontius, but he gave him a choice. It could have been Barabbas.
Whoever told you to rob the bank, you still robbed the bank. Okay. So you can play, but what you're saying, what Willie is saying right now is the sort of the theoretical framework that people are fly around with,
right,
and whatnot, and try to make this thing something other than what it is. But fundamentally, you could not hang somebody, you could not crucify somebody in the Roman Empire on your own.
Well, the reason I say that, Mr. Hare, is because his wife had a dream,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "Whatever you do, don't mess with, don't let this be under your blood." So that's because he actually didn't want Christ to die. That's why he asked the people. So I don't know if we could.
I get all of that. All that waffly stuff. That's like the Republicans giving you some song and dance about the insurrection and whatnot. They still did it. Just because they got a rationale for why they did it doesn't mean that they didn't do it. They still did it, right? So I don't want to get too far on a tangent because there's a point I want to make out of this, right?
Yeah, make your point.
The fundamental point is that it was the Romans who killed the Christ.
That carried it out.
Right. The Jews asked for the Christ to be killed.
Yeah. Right.
But it was the Romans who killed the Christ.
Right. Okay,
right?
I agree with that.
Now, I'm not saying that because I want you to get mad at the Romans.
Right.
Political stuff goes on all the time. People get assassinated, people get killed, people fall down the stairs. Bad things happen all the time, right? I'm just trying to help us to understand contextually that it became a tenet of how people conceived their reality when Rome became a Christian nation. Mm-hmm. Their learning from that included the ideation that the Jews killed the Christ, not the Romans killed the Christ. Now, you know why the Romans would say that, right? Because if they become Christians and in learning the Christian faith, they learned that the Christ was crucified, and it was them who crucified the Christ. That's not a good resume, for you taking on that religion. Mm-hmm. So it became a state-mounted mythology, right? The Roman state itself, actually spoke this reality that it was the Jews, those terrible Jews, they're the ones who did it. And then they began to ascribe reasons why the Jews were such horrible people doing this. It's because they were merchants. It's because they were bankers. It's because they were good at business. They're thieves. They're robbing you. Those horrible, you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That mythology exists right now.
Yeah.
Right now. That mythology about Jewish people exists right now. Wow. Okay? That's how deep this thing runs.
Okay.
So as a consequence of this, the Jewish people have always found themselves in a context in which they were in land that was controlled by other people, not controlled by the Jewish people. Ever since the fall, there were two Israelite states. It was first there was the state of Israel, and then you had the 10 tribes that broke away from the Judah and Manasseh broke away from them and became the province of Judah and the nation of Israel, the northern, what they call the northern kingdom. The northern kingdom was conquered by the Assyrians in roughly 720, 721 BC, before the birth of the Christ. And the southern kingdom, Judah, was conquered by the Assyrians or the Persians in, I think it was 585 or 586 BC, before the birth of the Christ. And so once that happened, the state of Israel as a state, as a nation, ceased to exist. In fact, when the Assyrians invaded and conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, Israel didn't even call itself Israel. It called itself Samaria, because the capital city of the northern kingdom was no longer Jerusalem. The capital city of the northern kingdom was a city called Samaria. You know the story of the Good Samaritan. Well, the reason why that story is talked about the way that it is that the Samaritans were essentially people that lived in the northern kingdom who were not Jews themselves, but they were mostly Persians or Assyrians and so on. But those people, in order to live in the land, they adopted the religion in the land. They became, from a religion standpoint, people that followed their version of Judaism. And so the actual Jews, the biologically, Jews, politically Jews, they looked at the Samaritans as bad people. You're inhabiting our land. You're adopting our religion, et cetera. So you had that context. And so when the Good Samaritan was the guy who was supposed to be in a hate thing, against Jewish people, he sees a guy on the road, needs some help. Jewish people walk by and pass gas, and so on, and moved on. But the Good Samaritan, he pulled his hips together and went and helped this guy.
Did you say pass gas?
Pass gas, yes.
Wow.
I try to be polite on the program, right?
Wow.
And
That's
so,
different.
but it helps you to understand what went on.
Right, absolutely, right. Regular folks
There you go.
Identify with
Right.
people
Let's
today.
roll with it, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just laying this out for you in terms of context.
Okay.
So since that time, Poland, Ukraine, Russia, France, all these people had this attitude towards the Jewish people because these were countries that had become Christianized countries. And as they became Christianized countries, they learned and internalized this mythology that was mounted by the Constantine and the Romans about the Jews being bad people, thieves and connivers and manipulators and all of that stuff that they say, about Jews. Now, I don't know if you all know any Jews. I know lots of Jewish people. And the idea of being manipulators and con men, I've never seen that ever. Not once.
I haven't seen that, but the ideology of the Jewish being good merchants and good with money really seems to reign true.
And that's cool.
Nothing wrong with
right?
that,
I
nothing
mean,
wrong with
there are lots of people who are carpenters because in their culture, carpentry was the thing that made the economy work.
And I have to say, some of my best friends was Jewish. James.
Stop talking like that. That always makes it sound like you're being condescending towards
it's
people.
true, though.
So, but I get that, right? And
That's because when people go, my best friends are black. That's condescending.
Right.
Me saying my best friend's Jewish is not condescending.
Okay, we're gonna let you pass on that, right? For right now, right? But you get the idea.
Yeah.
When World War II happened, just to put this again into context.
Okay.
You had the Nazis, and their hate campaign against the Jewish people. Mm-hmm. Now, imagine if you were a Jewish person and you lived in Europe, and you see these Nazis murdering and slaughtering and imprisoning people in Germany, and then you see the Nazis breaking out of Germany and attacking Poland with a blitzkrieg, and then they attack Austria and then Serbia, and everywhere they go, they're bringing their anti-Jewish game, with them. How would you feel about that? You would feel like, man, I'm under threat everywhere I go, right? I've got to find a way out. A lot of Jewish people had moved to the United States, just like other people in Europe moved to the United States. If I'm not mistaken, when World War II began in 1938, 1939, when World War II began, there were more German people who lived in the United States than there were German people who lived in Germany.
Wow, didn't know that.
People never talk about that.
Didn't know that.
The German population, if my recollection is correct, the German population was the largest ethnic population in the United States.
Wow.
I mean, if you count, how many were French, how many were English, how many were this and how many were that, the German population had the highest number of ethnic people in their ethnicity than any other ethnicity in the United States. Now, why is that important? Because the conflict in Germany, mounted by the Nazis, was looked at in the United States as if this was a conflict between the Germans and a subpopulation of Jewish people.
Yeah.
And the United States as a nation did not react quickly in a let me come and help way. The United States acted like, well, it's just them, it's just the Jews. Because the anti-Semitism that was going on in Europe, that had the Jews always trying to find a place that they can call their home, where they can live by themselves and not be, tormented and treated as if they're some sort of enemies and whatnot. That ideation that the Jews were focused on, the American public had just as much anti-Semitism going on in the American public as was going on in the European public.
Yeah.
That's why the United States didn't react, right? It wasn't until, and I don't know all the mythology about Pearl Harbor. I know everybody's got little stories about, Roosevelt knew that Pearl Harbor was going to happen before it happened and so on. I don't know about all of that stuff. I do know that once Pearl Harbor occurred and an attack occurred on American soil, right, in the islands of Hawaii, once that occurred, the United States got drawn into the war. We got to fight. They're bringing the war to our doorstep, so we got to fight. But before that, the United States didn't even react when the Germans were bombing England, which is considered to be the mother country of the United States. The United States didn't go to war right then and there. They were running their mouths about it, but they didn't go to war right away. It wasn't until they actually attacked American territory that the United States said, okay, we in it now. We're in it all the way. My core point is that the Jewish population, literally all across Europe and even in the United States, were always seeking the ability to live in a space that they could just be Jewish people, period. Whether they were Orthodox Jewish or they were some other kind of Jewish, whatever the different versions of Judaism are, their thing was they wanted to be able to live in some space that they could live in and just be Jewish people and not have people treating them as if they were some sort of suspects, right? Why do they have to be the suspects, right, of somebody's mythology? So their ideation was their homeland, what they perceived to be their homeland, was Palestine, the promised land, right? Now, the problem with that is that's how the Jews look at Palestine. That's not how the Palestinians look at Palestine. The Palestinians don't think that the Palestine is the Jews' homeland. The Palestinians think that the Palestine is the Palestinians' homeland. And it's the homeland of the Amorites and the Hittites and the Assyrians and whatever the other ethnicities were that lived in that area. So they're the people who we call the Palestinians. There really has never been a country called Palestine. Palestine is just the name of a territory. Well, I don't want to go too far in the detail of the politics and whatnot. The point I'm making is that the Jewish people have ideated for the longest to be able to recover what they consider to be the promised land and to be able to live in the promised land promised to them by the one God prior to the beginning of the Christ. From the Jewish perspective, the history of being Jewish, that goes back to Abraham and his son Jacob, right? So now you're talking about 1900 years before the birth of the Christ. That's when the Jewish people begin as Israelis. So from their perspective, that's their beginning, and the promised land is their homeland. So that's what they're fighting for. But the people who have never left Palestine, who were living in Palestine 12,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, those people still live in Palestine. They don't agree that the Jewish people are the indigenous or the aboriginal population of Palestine. I think the facts support that, right? So instead of us in the world trying to work out a way to make this work for everybody, which would seem to be the sensible thing to do, we've tried to make this work for the Jewish people, mainly because we have guilt. We in the United States have guilt. Why do we have guilt? Because we saw this going down in Germany and we didn't do anything about it. We acted like it didn't matter. We just turned our backs and we ignored it. And we said those Heckle and Jekyll despicable things about Jewish people that came out, and it didn't just come out of the mouths of redneck white people. Black people made the same kinds of Heckle and Jekyll remarks about Jewish people. So the Jewish people have a fundamental fear of the security that they have in the presence of anybody other than themselves, because we've demonstrated that we have not been faithful. So I think because of that, the United States now, its policies are founded in that guilt that the United States shares for not having acted when they should have acted, and that situation that happened in Germany may have been a completely different thing. Instead of having 6 or 8 million Jews killed by these Nazis and their perpetrators, maybe that would have been less than 1 million that got killed, because war would have come earlier. People would have fought stronger earlier. People would have come together earlier and prevented all of that carnage from going on. Wow. So I'm trying to help us understand this stuff contextually, because you all didn't live this history, but those of us who are older did live this history.
Well, I just want to say, Mr. Hare, thank you for that lesson. I mean, it's always nice to get a lesson like that, but I find myself thinking and even feeling particular biases myself about the way that things are going on here. Now, it's kind of funny, but we are not the indigenous people here in the United States.
Right.
I mean, basically, not at all. So when I see Arabs coming here and buying stores and becoming well off due to some of the things here, I had a bias with that, and I'm seeing and looking and feeling that, and I know it's not right. I know I shouldn't feel that way, but as a person that lives here and has been here, I think that this is something a lot of people feel this way when people
There's
coming into
no
the
question. There's no question, and because of that, we have ambivalence in how we regard these events that go on in the world.
Yeah.
Parts of us feel like, well, yeah, you deserve it. Parts of us feel like, well, I'm on their side, and so on. There's all of these currents. I'm just trying to help us understand the factual part of this thing.
Yes.
And then you just have to read the facts and make some intelligent decisions about how you regard what's going on based on the facts.
Yeah.
Right.
And then,
I guess so. So I'm saying that because what's going on right now is you have militant portions of the Palestinian population that live in Gaza and the West Bank and so on in Palestine. You have portions of them who are willing to fight to the death to recover their land, where they used to be their vineyards, they used to be their farms, they used to be their mosques, and their worship places. that have been taken over and occupied by somebody else. They've been occupied since I think the war was in 1967, 68, the Yom Kippur War. They've been occupied for like 56 years, and so on. And so from their perspective, they got nothing but hate, in their heart, right?
Right.
Now you got some Palestinians that have said, well, we just got to learn how to get along with them, and they, just like you see some black people get along with some white people, even if the white people were racist white people, they still found a way to get along with them.
Right.
Well, that's the same thing you see going on, in Palestine. But you got some Palestinians that are, I'm not with this. We're going to fight to the death. So now you got enough weapons that have been put into the hands of these Palestinians and ammunition and so on, and people that have been muscled up to train, that they actually have been attacking over this weekend, attacking Israel. If I'm not mistaken, something in the area of 600 or 700 Israelis are already dead from this conflict. And a similar number of Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli forces that have fought what they call the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, are fighting against the Palestinians. So I just want to make this one point. We're looking at this from the perspective, the United States people are looking at this from the perspective of the Israelis defending themselves from these Palestinian, terrorists. But to the Palestinians, it's the Israelis who are the terrorists, because the Palestinians feel like this is their land. They've been there for tens of thousands of years, and you're the invader, not them. That's how they see it. I just want you to understand that context.
I got you. Just a real quick question. With that being said, and seeing this, would this bring the United States there to the defense? I mean, that's why I asked the question earlier, were they our allies? And would that bring us?
So I don't know that it would necessarily bring the United States soldiers on the ground in Palestine, although that may be one way to solve the problem. But I know that there are naval warships of the United States that have already been turned from wherever they were, and they pulled over into the Mediterranean and into the Red Sea and put themselves in a position where if they need to mount a military strike, the United States has military people in a position to carry out that kind of an effort. I don't want to say an attack, but an effort. But listen, Willie's got that music playing, and he keeps trying to remind us that the music means that you're supposed to take a break. So be mindful. The program does cost money, and we need to make sure that the program is paid for. Thank you all for supporting us. We will see you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM, WBNY.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM, WBNY, Buffalo. Ready for radio that's challenging, innovative, and encouraging? Tune in, Living for the People.
This is L. Nathan Hare. Join me right here, 91.3 FM WBNY. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. after Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! We'll provide objective analysis regarding current issues. Call 878-5104. It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM WBNY. All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan Hare, your host. We're here with Norm McCarthy, who is our citizen of the area. He's our in-studio audience of one. Welcome back, Norm.
Thank you, Mr. Hare.
And, of course, we're here with Willie H., who does the live streaming of the program. Welcome back, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan Hare. Make sure you guys call in 716-878-5104.
I really would like to hear people's thoughts. I tried to lay out in the very brief framework that we have a framework of understanding how this conflict has emerged and what's really going on here. Here's some other thoughts. I went to an article written by Al Jazeera. This is a news organization like Reuters or UPI, Associated Press. This one is one that has an Arab flavor, Middle Eastern flavor, not an Arab, but a Middle Eastern flavor to it.
Okay.
But I went to them because they often give you facts that you won't find in other places. Now, when you hear what's going on in Palestine and with Israel today, with this Palestinian raids or attacks on Israel, when you hear that, the Palestinians involved are referred to as terrorists. Is that what you heard?
Yeah.
You didn't hear them as freedom fighters.
Right.
You didn't hear them as nationalists. You didn't hear them as settlers. You hear of them as entirely terrorists. Mm-hmm. What does terrorism mean? Does that mean that you're somebody who, does stuff to people to terrorize them, to make them obey whatever it is that you want them to obey? Is that what terrorism means? Well, pretty much that's what I think terrorism means. Settlers are like, the people that settled the Wild Wild West. They came in on wagons, with long dresses and cowboy boots and, shovels and and pickaxes and, tamed the land and, they settled, right?
Yeah.
So on February 26th of this year, not this current conflict, but earlier this year, February 26th, at least 400 Israeli settlers, get that word settlers, attacked several Palestinian villages in the town of Nablus, including, or the territory of Nablus, including the community of Hawara, killing one man and injuring hundreds of others. The settlers burned down more than 30 homes and at least 100 cars while beating Palestinians with metal rods and rocks. This was not according to Al Jazeera. This was according to the Israelis' own media. This is what they reported. So if that's what they reported, it probably was worse than what they're telling. Yeah. On March 1 of this year, Bezalel, how do you say his name? Bezalel Smotrich, Israel's finance minister, who handles civil administration in the occupied Bank of Palestine, he said that Hawara should be wiped out. That's how the Israelis felt about the people who lived in Hawara. Now, the people who live in Hawara might have some militants among them, but the people of Hawara themselves, they're not militants. They're not in some army. They're not terrorists and so on. They're just people that live in that area.
Yeah.
But this Israeli finance minister actually said he wanted them all wiped out, the entire city. Between 600,000 and 750,000 Israeli settlers, get that word settlers, live in at least 250 settlements and outposts built by the Israeli government and settlers across the occupied Palestinian West Bank and East Jerusalem. So it's not just that you have what the Palestinians will feel are terrorists from the Israeli nationals in this area who are messing with them. It's not just that you have that, but the actual government of Israel is engaged in terrorism from the perspective of these Palestinians. Now, if you're in that population of 600,000 to 750,000 people and some other place came along and occupied 250 cities or villages in your area, and took over the houses, took over the businesses, and drove you out, would you look at them as some liberation forces, or would you look at them as terrorists? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Do we ever call a hang on there?
No, that was Bank of America.
Oh, Bank of America. Boy, where did they get this number? Okay. So anyway, quoting the Al Jazeera article again, it says Israeli settlements are illegal under international law as they violate the Fourth Geneva Convention, which bans an occupying power from transferring its population to the area that it occupies. So it means that even if you conquer and occupy a territory, it is illegal under international law for you to move population from your country into the territory of that you now occupy, because what that becomes, the result of that becomes ethnic cleansing. It means you wind up killing the indigenous population and replacing it with your population. Yeah. Now you know that indigenous that ethnic cleansing is not just somebody else. Ethnic cleansing. Let me put this in context for you, so you can feel me. When Christopher Columbus, whose birthday that y'all celebrate, today, you know that tradition and whatnot.
Christopher Columbus.
When he showed up here, there was something in the area of 25 or so million indigenous people, what we now call Native Americans.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Who lived in North America. Another 25, 26 million lived in South America. Mm-hmm. And maybe a sprinkling of 3 or 4 million lived in Central America.
Right.
Of the population of people who were indigenous Americans in, say, 1600 A.D., of that population of people, 95% of them were dead by 1900.
Wow.
95% of them are dead. There are fewer than, I would say, fewer than 1 million actual indigenous American people left in this country, in North America, because all the rest have been killed. So ethnic cleansing is the wellspring of how the United States was formed.
Yeah, exactly how it was formed.
And it seems to be that's the blueprint for how people, the conquering people, have operated everywhere in the world.
Well, here's my question. I guess for the United States and for us being who we are, I guess we can be proud of that. I guess that. I mean, how in the heck can you be celebrating Columbus? There's no way I see celebrating him when he was a murderer and a rapist. And I mean the things that went on with him.
And not just that he was a murderer and a rapist. They made murder and raping the methodology.
Oh yeah.
Of the conquest of the Americas by the Europeans, the English, the Dutch, the French, the Spanish, and so on. Yeah. All used the same methodology. All did it. Now I want to amend that a bit, because if you look in South America, the indigenous American population has grown in South America. The indigenous population in North America was almost completely made extinct.
Yeah.
So that means that the people who were the players, the perpetrators, the ones that were behind, the conquest and the occupation of these territories in the Americas, had different spirits. The Spanish wanted you to be their servants, wanted you to be their tools, but they made you sort of a quasi lower caste citizen of their country. But the English said that you were not really human. You were basically a talking dog. That's a different spirit.
Right.
Yeah.
And the results you see are different results.
Mr. Head, just to add maybe a little bit more, and I think I learned this from you actually, and I hate to say this, but even with that extinction us as black folks, being some of the first cowboys I've heard,
Yep.
we was also used to kill those
Right.
people.
Right. Because if you wanted to have a chance to live a good life, they said, well, kill like 300 of those people over there and I'll get you a house.
So when you let me just add this.
I know that sounds ugly and whatnot. I know y'all don't like to hear that, but that is the way it went.
Yeah.
Right?
When
You can't get better unless you recognize the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
If you never recognize the truth, you can never heal. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, I just wanted to add that when you migrate and you take on new, you actually, I guess, have to, in most cases, even with animals, we've wiped out not just the people, but the animals that were here from the beginning. And in order to try to better ourselves, and see these things, these weren't.
And what were those animals doing in the first place? Didn't they know that was our territory? What's wrong with these things? Got these little buffaloes and whatnot running around here. They wiped out all of the buffaloes. There are no buffaloes left.
Yeah.
They wiped them all out.
I heard somebody said there are a buffalo.
There's bisons that are left.
Oh, okay.
Bisons look like buffaloes, but they're not buffaloes.
All right.
Yeah.
The buffalo itself literally has been wiped off the planet.
Yeah.
Right? The dodo bird, gone. But those are animals. But they are human beings. Human beings called the Tanzanians. Every single one of them gone. Same spirit, same people. This is New Zealand, but the same source people, source of this terrorism, the same people operating the same way everywhere. The Hottentots, the Bush people in the Orange Free States, virtually every one of them wiped out. They've waged a war of extermination against these people. This is the tradition of the people that we call our allies, okay? Yeah. So I say all of this, but I need for us to understand this in context. The things that I'm saying are true, but it's not saying enough of the truth. The rest of the truth is we live here now. We don't live here then. We live here now. I can't do anything at all about what happened then. I can't change that. I can change what happens now, what I do going forward. I think that this Israeli-Palestinian conflict is founded on a basis that cannot be sustained. The Palestinians are never going to stop feeling that Palestine is their homeland. The Israelis are never going to stop feeling that Palestine is their homeland. The United Nations and the United States came up with what they called a two-state solution, having a state of Israel next to a state of Palestine, or whatever name you wanted to call, Palestine, and to make them both healthy, strong, economically viable states. Well, they did that with Israel. The United States putting up $5, $6, $7, $8 billion a year to help Israel put itself on its feet, to create its businesses, to create, water desalination facilities, to give it relationships, with the international community to sell their goods and their services and so on. But with the Palestinians never accepted the existence of Israel in the first place. This is the part that we have to get to. If you get conquered, it's put it like this. African people in the United States are the descendants, 99% of us are the descendants of people who were kidnapped and brought to the United States and pressed into enslavement. 99% of us are that. If we walk around today and say, I'm not going to settle until you give me back 550, or what, let me say it another way. You give me back $2 trillion or whatever it is, whatever the price is that you want to put on a head. If I say that I'm not going to settle unless you give me this money, and you give me a homeland in, say, Alabama, or Virginia and so on, if I say I'm not going to settle, we're never going to be able to settle, because you can want what you want, but you can't make that happen, and you can't make the people that you want this to get this from. You can't get them to accept that price. So you have to accept a reality and negotiate a different space that gives you more of what you feel you want. So if you can put yourself in a place where you have space that you can operate in, that you have safety in, that you can grow and prosper in, that's what you want to pursue. The Palestinians are not seeing it that way. If the Palestinians were to accept, well, nothing I can do about the fact that Israel's here. They're here now. They've been here for 70-something years. I can't change that. So let me stop chasing something that I can't change. Let me try to chase something that can be changed. Y'all should pay me money. You should put something in my hands. I should have half of this territory. You should help me build roads. You should help me build water desalination plants. You should help me to be able to market my goods in the world market, and so on. And if you started down that road, it won't happen instantly, but it puts you on a road that leads to something that can actually occur. What we're doing right now does not lead to something that can occur. What it leads to is more conflict. What it leads to is more death, more ruin, more destruction. And somehow we have to get the Palestinians to accept this, and we have to get the people like the American public to say, this is what we're willing to get behind. The American public talks a lot of stuff, but their policies, what they actually do, does not reflect their rhetoric. We need to push differently. Go ahead.
I'm looking at it from a standpoint of when we look at this particular situation, and if we were going to try to help them in that way, I think we should involve NATO. I think we should involve other countries, to help us, because
NATO is involved. But they're doing the same thing that the Americans are doing. They're accepting the Israeli premise that they need to have a place that's their homeland that they can defend and so on. And so they propped that up and made that possible.
Okay. Yeah.
But they have not done the other side of it. Now, the other side of it, creating the Palestinian state, it's not just the fault of the American and European policymakers that there's no Palestinian state, that has come into existence. A lot of that is because the Palestinians themselves have not been willing to accept a state set up next to Israel as a Palestinian state. They want all of the old land that they had. They want all of that land back. But the reality is that's not going to happen.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying. I was basically aiming that towards the Palestinians. You know what I mean? We've already helped Israel. So helping the Palestinians would, in one way, it would stop war. You know what I mean? Or at least put it at a halt for a period of time.
So we need to also advocate with the Iranians, with the Iraqis, with the Yemenites, with the Lebanese, with the Omanis, with the Abu Dhabis and all these Middle Eastern countries and whatnot. We need to advocate with them that you all have to get together with us and come up with a framework for how we create a reality for the Palestinians where they've got food, clothing, shelter, businesses, hospitals, roads, educational facilities, etc., that they have that for themselves without people from Palestine shooting at people in Israel and people in Israel shooting at Palestine. Israel has to accept that the entire landmass that they call the Promised Land, they have to accept, thank you, they have to accept that they're not going to get all of that. It's only in the Bible that there's any record that was your territory in the first place.
Right.
Right? I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
The Muslim people have their own Bible, right? Called the Quran.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. In their Quran, it don't say that, all of Palestine belonged to Israel, right? So you can't take something that is specific to your religion and impose that as if that's the reality that everybody else in the world has to treat it as if that's real because you say it's real. Because other people have religions, they have mythologies, They have iconic, beliefs, that they have. Do you want them to be able to impose their iconic beliefs on you? Of course not. So we have to get the Israelite population to accept that you got the biggest chunk of the apple already. Live with that. We have to get the Palestinian population to understand there's an apple here that you can eat. That's your apple. But you got to accept that that's your apple. You don't get any more apple. You just get this apple, right? And all you Middle Eastern folks that have these, animated, thirst for vengeance against Israel, you got to let that go, because all it's doing is costing you money and costing you lives, and it's definitely costing the Palestinians virtually their existence.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out a way to go forward that makes sense.
And it's about being very proactive and very quick about it, because the longer we dilly-dally with help, but it's about the Palestinians allowing us to help them, because
right.
they feel that this is theirs already. They don't want a negotiation. They want what they think is theirs already. And,
I want to hit one more thing. I know we only got 1 minute, or two left in the program, but I really wanted to get to this, and I didn't get a chance to do it. We have another little hustle going on here. You know what I mean by a hustle? Somebody's saying one thing, but they're really playing for something else, and they're conning you because they're exciting you with the thing that they're showing you, and all the while you're getting excited and going towards the thing that they're showing you, something else is going on that's going to really hurt you. Canal wrote an article that the internet believes that Donald Trump has found a back door to the presidency that makes the 2024 race redundant. This was in MSN.com. Former President Trump has expressed his willingness to step into the role of Speaker of the House. We talked about this on Friday, right? He wants to step into the role.
Yes.
I'll be Speaker for 90 days, so I can unify the Republican Party and I can help you all. You do believe Donald Trump was trying to help you, right? Well, hopefully you'll get better if you believe that. The former president's unexpected offer comes at a time when he's already planning to make a significant appearance on Capitol Hill in the near future. He stated, "I've been asked to speak as a unifier because I have so many friends in Congress. If they don't get to vote, they have asked me if I would consider taking the speakership until they get somebody longer term because I'm running for president." Now, the position of Speaker of the House holds immense importance because it is third in the line of succession to the White House in order of presidential succession. Trump's potential involvement in this role has generated significant interest. Trump's decision to insert himself into the Speaker's race was foreshadowed. It is worth noting that technically the Speaker of the House does not need to be a sitting member of the House of Representatives, does not need to be a congressperson. The point I'm making is Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, and these people in the Republican Party have been pressing to impeach Joe Biden and to impeach Kamala Harris, to impeach them for existing, not because they did anything wrong, but impeach them for existing. How dare you exist when we want Donald Trump to be our president? If they were to succeed in the impeachment, and you can't say it won't happen because these are Americans. In the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party, you got Americans on both sides. So what is being proposed is if Joe Biden is impeached successfully and Kamala Harris is impeached successfully, the third in the line of the succession is the Speaker of the House.
Oh.
So if Donald Trump gets to become Speaker of the House because these people that are also the impeachers want him to be the Speaker of the House, he would wind up inheriting the presidency without even being elected to the presidency.
All right, I'm going to add to this real quick, Mr. Hare. As we spoke before, and as I asked you about impeachment and what it is, if it came to that, President Biden should not step down and not be diplomatic, along with Kamala Harris. This is something that cannot happen, and impeachment is just something that we can't have. Don't step down and hold on to your office.
So we don't have enough time to go through what Norm just talked about, but that's the axis that we are on, and I'm hoping that you can see that there is a lot of potential animated emotion and potentially animated violence that will occur in this country, right? We are setting our country on a very bad course, and Donald Trump is always on the bad course. He's never on the good course. He's never on what's going to be good for the United States. He's always going to be on what's good for Donald Trump. Thank you all for listening to us and supporting us. We look forward to talking to you all on Wednesday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY. We will see you all then.